Christian, CYInterview covering Las Vegas and the world. If you haven't already, please hit the like button below and please hit the subscribe button below. And please ring that bell to keep up with everything we have going on here at CYInterview in Las Vegas and beyond. We greatly appreciate it. We are continuing our road to WrestleMania today, 13 days away from WrestleMania at Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas, by looking back at the Genius, one of our CYInterviews with Lanny Poffo. It was a great one, and here it is.
You're on CYInterview.
I'm Chris Yandick. Featured columnist Jay Bilstein is with me. We welcome to CYInterview one of the great legends of professional wrestling, Mr. Lanny Poffo, of course, the genius of professional wrestling, the poet laureate of professional wrestling, and of course, Leaping Lanny Poffo. Mr. Poffo, thanks so much for joining us today here on CYInterview. How are you today?
I am the genius, full of glory and renown, still living in the past.
Well, here's the question I have for you more than anything else. Where did the love of poetry come from?
I had a crush on my 5th grade teacher, and I would have done anything to get any kind of praise from her. And she was just, we're still friends today. She's a grandmother. She's about 76 years old. We still keep in touch. And also, when I was wrestling in Nashville, when I was about 22 years old, there was a strange bald-headed guy in the audience, and he introduced himself, and his name was Shel Silverstein. And we became friends. Actually, not friends, but he took me out to dinner with his entourage. And then I saw him many years later in the airport in Miami. And are you familiar with Shel Silverstein?
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
Okay, not everybody is, but, he sold 30 million books, but... Where the Sidewalk Ends, Light in the Attic, and some songs like A Boy Named Sue, the Unicorn song. So he gave me a lot of encouragement, and that's how my love of poetry got nurtured.
Did you ever think, though, when we're speaking about that topic, when you get into the wrestling ring in the WWE, WWF then, of course, and you start reciting these poems, that you could use them as a heel and that they would get over with a crowd?
Well, here's what happened. You know what TNT is, Tuesday Night Titans?
Sure, of course, absolutely.
Okay, I was a guest on that show in 1985, and I knew that a babyface with no gimmick, how boring is that, right? So, anyway, I decided to go for broke. I said, I'll never be invited back if I'm boring. So I put on my suit of armor, which is theatrical armor, cost me $1,800. I lost it in 50 bunkhouse battle royals, but it more than paid for itself. And then I wrote a poem for TNT, Vince and Awful Alfred. And when we went to black, which, as you know, is when you go to commercial, Vince McMahon said, Lanny, that was great. From now on, you do a poem before every match. And I pretended to be cool about it. I just said, okay, but inside I was going, yes! And I had a gimmick, so that was it. And then when I became a villain, the genius, oh man, that was easy. I just went to every city and insulted their sports team. That was easy. Yeah, because there's no heat like cheap heat.
Oh, absolutely. Jay?
Lanny, do you feel that what you did was particularly important in terms of the younger audience, because not only did you show them that you could be an athletic and physical specimen in the ring, but you could be a person who used your imagination and your intellect, and that they don't have to be mutually exclusive, that a kid doesn't have to choose to be a fighter or a tough guy or a scientist or a poet or a writer. He can combine different things and be kind of a renaissance, or she can combine things and be kind of a renaissance person. Didn't you kind of originate almost a renaissance man of wrestling flavor with your gimmicks?
Thank you so much, and I'll tell you what, it makes me feel so happy to know that there are children that become interested in poetry because of me. Every time, they give me their poems, and no matter what they sound like, I always say that's really great. Because my job is to fan the flame of their passion. Whether I think it's great or not think it's great, I always say something positive. I'm not Simon Cowell.
Oh, there's no denying that. Mr. Poffo, let me ask you now, what are you up to today?
Oh, I'm just taking care of my mother. After my father died and my brother died right after, she hit the skids pretty badly. So I sold my house, I moved in with her, and she's going to be 90 years old in
God bless her.
January 28th, and she's doing much better. I told her, do you want to live or do you want to die? She says, I want to live. I said, then you have to notify your face. And I haven't seen you smile in years. You're going to have to smile and laugh. And she says, but what if I lost? I said, fake it till you make it.
You went through, you brought up your dad and, of course, your brother, best known as the Macho Man. They passed away in a fairly short period of time, didn't they, one after the other?
I'll tell you what a blessing was that my father died first. That way he got to miss my brother's funeral, because he would not have enjoyed that. And so I'm glad he, kept the order correct. The parents should die first. Unfortunately, my mother was alive for both of them. And the suffering was unbelievable. And in fact, I just can't even stand to think about it, how my mother suffered. Because, you know him as the Macho Man, but that's her baby, her firstborn, So, anyway, like I told her, I said, hey, you got something to feel happy about. This is not Lee Harvey Oswald. This is the Macho Man Randy Savage, and he made a positive impact in the world, and he had a beautiful life for 58 and a half years.
Did you, Lanny, after the passing of your brother, kind of turn around and take stock of your own life, or say, hey, maybe I better go for more checkups, or do anything like that, or adjust your diet, or because I found, at least in my family, somebody passes away or a friend passes away, sure, we are sad, and that person has gone on. They're no longer sad, they're no longer struggling, but we're still here and we're sad. But then there's the part of us, I think, that might be a little bit selfish, and we say, whoa, they were my age, or they were almost my age, or they weren't that much older than me. What does life have in store for me? Maybe I should, I don't know, maybe I should start walking more. Maybe I should eat less fat or anything. Did any of that happen to you?
Well, see, I've always been a health nut, and I've never let my individuality become trampled by mobs. So I am interested in eating 6 things, which I will tell you: greens, onions, mushrooms, beans, berries, and seeds.
You sound like a guy who's read the works of Joel Fuhrman.
I am, as a matter of fact, Joel Fuhrman came to Tampa, 2 interviews, two speeches, and I was there in the front row for both speeches. Because I figured, when am I going to get a chance? And we got a picture taken together. But it changed to G-bombs.
Yes.
Onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. But being an acronym, it makes more sense. G-bombs is almost a coherent thought. But yeah, I love Joel Fuhrman. I also loved Rip Esselstyn.
Rip Esselstyn, the son of Caldwell Esselstyn, who wrote the book, I believe, that came out about 10 or 9 years ago about reversing and preventing heart disease. We had him on with us for an hour. Fascinating stuff.
I'll tell you what, please tell him that I'm a big fan of his. Now, the reason, when I told my daughter, and she's a health nut too, is I like them both because Joel Fuhrman tells you what to eat, and Rip Esselstyn is really good at telling you what not to eat, because he turns his shirt inside out, makes a fantastic speech. Very motivating. Yeah,
as a matter of fact, his dad, Caldwell Esselstyn, who wrote this book on reversing, preventing heart disease. He talks about whole food, plant-based diet, and what he does, his son Rip calls is plant perfect. Rip says that he does plant strong, and of course what must be very interesting for you, you're an athlete, and of course Rip Esselstyn is a former competitive triathlete. We've also had on Thomas Campbell, who with his dad co-authored the China study, which was a landmark study about this whole thing about whole food, plant-based diet. For all your fans out there who are listening to this, would you know, there are so many guys, a lot of us, feel macho, hey, I've got to eat meat, hey, I've got to do this and that. What life-saving information could you give, and what could you say about maintaining your athletic ability while eating this way? Has it dropped off, or do you have more energy than ever?
Oh, I feel better than ever, and here's the thing, and I find this a little hilarious. What does a horse eat? Not meat, right? A horse doesn't eat meat because...
Nor do elephants.
They're not a predator, they're prey. So, who's got better muscles than a horse? Nobody. I mean, who's especially, you see a horse and they're beautiful animals, and they never eat meat. So the protein, I'll tell you what, I'm 60. I'm going to be 62 years old, and we used to have a thing called the 5 basic food groups. And you know what? If you look on the fine print, the American Dairy Association invented this. So in other words, they don't love you. It's about the money.
And so you'd say again for all your fans that you've been eating this way and you feel strong and athletic as ever.
Yeah, you see, I don't. Okay, if I live to be 100, that's only 38 more years. I am greedy. I don't want to live to be 100. I want to live indefinitely, and I want to prove to the world what a Nutritarian diet can do for a person.
And of course, Nutritarian is, I believe, a phrase coined by Joel Furman. Very, very compelling stuff, Lanny. We do a lot of health-oriented, a lot of whole food, plant-based diet type of interviews and information here on CYInterview. So it's very interesting that you're here today beyond all your great poetry and wrestling stuff, Chris.
Mr. Poffo, any great stories about the late Mr. Fuji?
Yes. Everybody always talks about how Fuji would, rib, the ribbing that went on.
Yeah, sure.
And, he played a lot of tricks on people, and I was afraid of him because, he was a bit of a sociopath, and it was a known fact that he didn't like his neighbors, so he put his dog in the crock pot and invited the neighbors over to eat, and then informed them that it was their dog they were eating. That was like but since I don't want to speak ill of the dead, let me tell you something good about Mr. Fuji. My brother, Macho Man Randy Savage, Lanny Poffo, decided to give my parents a 50th anniversary present and first-class tickets to Hawaii and Japan. And he told Mr. Fuji he was doing that. Mr. Fuji, Harry Fujiwara, he says, I will take care of it. Give me he says, he found out the ticket and everything. He had his people meet him at the airport in Honolulu, took them to the hotel, gave them the tour of the island that you can't get if you pay money. You see what I mean? Because it was he did all those wonderful things for my parents, and now that he's passed away, instead of everybody talking about his ribs and his skullduggery, I would like to mention that if he liked you, he could do wonderful things, and I would like to, people to think good thoughts about him.
So Mr. Fuji literally became the person who gave your parents a tour of Hawaii.
Well, he had his people do it. Yeah,
I gotcha.
He wasn't there. Because he was on the road with my brother, but he had lived in Hawaii for a lot of years. He had a lot of friends, and he gave my parents the Blue Chip Tour.
Truly fantastic stuff. Now, focusing on your brother, the late Macho Man Randy Savage, I was fortunate enough to speak with him on 2 different occasions. The nicest guy ever. Just wonderful conversations that we had. Now, focusing on the Hall of Fame speech last year, was that the toughest moment of your life?
Actually, yes and no. Okay? I mean, I don't mean to be talk in circles here. I didn't think, see, it's going to be 5 years, May 20th, right? So it's like, I thought I was all cried out on that one. But when I got in front of all the fans and all of them showing such appreciation, I got emotional because the people that loved him the most were there to appreciate him so well. And, it chokes, just choked me up to hear about it. I mean, just thinking about it now. But I felt vindicated afterwards. As you probably know, he didn't want to go in the Hall of Fame by himself. He wanted to go as a member of the Poffo family, Lanny, Randy, and Angelo. But John Laurinaitis called me up before the WrestleMania that was in Miami. That was about 6 months after Randy passed. And I told him that Randy's wishes were that we go in as a family. And, of course, that got negated. And as the years passed, I became 59 years old. And I do a lot of meditation. And it occurred to me, hey, I'm the older brother now. I can make unpopular decisions because Randy made all the unpopular decisions because he was the older brother, the alpha male. Now, because of lack of competition, I'm the alpha male, not the beta anymore. So I said the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. That's from Spock, The Wrath of Khan. And Mark Carano called me and asked me if I wanted to do an interview. He works for WWE. I said, yes, I will, and I've changed my mind. I want Randy to go in the Hall of Fame by himself. And he said, oh, I can't believe this. Oh, wait, I'll tell everybody. So he said, let me call you back. So boom, he calls me back in about 20 minutes and said, here's the deal. We only have one posthumous inductee per year, and this year it's going to be Paul Bearer. But if you can kayfabe, keep a secret, next year in San Jose, Macho Man will be in the Hall of Fame. And I said, beautiful. Now, my mother was very upset because she knew that Randy's wishes. She says, you can't do that. This is Randy's wishes. And I said, I am the older brother now. I get to make unpopular decisions. It's my wishes that are going to happen. And Macho Man is going in the Hall of Fame because the fans have been suffering enough. On one hand, you got one Macho Man. On the other hand, you got millions and millions of Macho fans. And if it wasn't for the Macho fan, the Macho Man would not exist. So in a way, I am doing Randy's bidding.
Mr. Poffo, you have always been someone that wanted to educate kids about the harms of smoking. You even wrote a book about that. Tell me about that.
Right. I'll tell you what. When my daughter was still a zygote, she was not born yet, I take my wife to the doctor and I read a magazine, how to curb your children from smoking. And I don't remember who wrote it, and I can't prove anything, but the article that I read said, according to statistics, non-smokers suffer less with the 5 nightmares of youth, and they are bad grades, dropping out of school, drugs and alcohol, teenage pregnancy, and teenage suicide. So I said, well, there's got to be a way that I can, help my daughter choose to not smoke, stands up to peer pressure. So I wrote 335 limericks all about smoking. Absorbent and yellow is he in his pineapple under the sea. The ocean's too wet for a lit cigarette. so SpongeBob lives happy, smoke-free. I've always refused to comply with smokers who want me to try my first cigarette, which I haven't had yet. I just tell them, no thank you, goodbye. If smoking is cool as they claim, then why is it always the same? The first time you try, you wish you could die. The last time achieving your aim. When Sheila earned her Ph.D. with her boyfriend of equal degree, dissertations got tough, so they smoked off the cuff. How stupid can smart people be? Anyway,
that's great.
It goes on and on.
That's great. That's great. That's just fantastic.
So I do public speaking, and since my daughter chose to not smoke, I like to help everybody's daughters and sons choose to not smoke, and that is peer pressure. It's like just ask yourself, why am I here? To smoke until I disappear? The reason for living is loving and giving. Tell pressure to jump off a pier. Now, those are corny puns, but I think there's something great about 5 lines and you tell the reason for living, and that is loving and giving.
I got to tell you, I don't think it's corny. I think this is just fantastic, and I would ask you, Lanny, between your dedication in getting kids not to smoke, and I would say people in general, and your commitment to good eating and all, is a good portion of what you do in public speaking, talking specifically about health, because certainly in the United States, we have a health crisis of obesity and overeating and all kinds of other problems that aren't going to be really taken care of unless we, the people, and not just the doctors, get with it, and I think that's your message. Do you do a lot of speaking about that?
Yes, I do. First of all, I check what topics they want, and then I stay within that topic. But I talk about SAD, S-A-D, Standard American Diet. And the reason of the obesity is because you're hungry all the time because your body isn't getting the nutrients it needs, not getting the phytochemicals, the vitamins and minerals, the micronutrients. So that's why they're constantly hungry and constantly tired. There's an old joke, I would diet and exercise, but I'm too hungry and tired. Well, there's a conundrum there. So the thing is, I used to love, when I was in Hawaii, I met Paul Bragg. And if you go to the health food store, apple cider vinegar, and Patricia Bragg has carried out.
He's actually the fellow who inspired Jack LaLanne.
That's right. And he inspired Lanny Poffo, too, because I was 12 years old and I heard his speech. And who wouldn't be moved by a speech like that? That was wonderful.
No, I would agree indeed. Chris, do we have time for a quick poem?
Yes. In closing, Lenny, do you have I have 2 questions on that subject. Do you have a favorite poem, and would you like to tell us a poem?
A favorite poem that somebody else wrote, or a favorite poem that I wrote?
A favorite poem that somebody else wrote, I guess, to begin with.
Okay, George Eliot, whose real name is Marianne Evans, and the reason she used the nom de plume of a man is because in the 19th century, a woman couldn't be taken seriously in getting published in the world of literature. So Marianne Evans wrote, at set of sun, and this is my attitude every day. If you sit down at set of sun and count the acts that you have done, one self-denying deed or word that cheered the heart of him who heard, one glance most kind that fell like sunshine where it went, then you may count the day well spent. But if through all the livelong day you've cheered no heart by yea or nay, if through it all you've nothing done that you can trace that brought the sunshine to one face, no act most small that helped some soul and nothing cost, then count that day as worse than lost. And I just want to say, not only was my brother a great man, but he was also a good man. And when he was, like, we would go out to eat and they would invariably recognize him, he would drop his fork or his chopsticks and say, "Ooh, what's your name?" They asked for his autograph. He'd say, Timmy, huh? yeah, I'm going to sign your autograph, but here's what you got to do for me. Are you ready? I said, yes. He said, how you doing in school? I'm doing okay. Then he talked to his parents. Is Timmy doing okay in school? Yes, he's doing very well. He said, well, you got to do your best and forget the rest. I'll tell you why. Because if you don't do good in school, it's going to be real, real bad for you. Now, I'm going to sign your autograph, but don't let me down. Don't let yourself down. And I thought to myself, you should see their faces light up to see the Macho Man actually the good man, not just a great man.
No denying that, No denying that, Mr. Poffo. Thanks so much as well.
Well, hold on, Chris. Hold on. Let's not say goodbye just in a traditional way. Why don't we say goodbye? Why don't we say goodbye to the great leaping Lanny Poffo, the genius, the poet laureate of wrestling, with a poet of his own? Why don't I have a poem for you, Lanny. I call this the Ode to Lanny Poffo. Leaping Lanny, you're quite a guy. You wrestle and write poetry. My, oh my. It's not the typical combination we see, but you decided to let your mind be free. You entertained us, as did your dear departed brother, the Macho Man. There was no other. Yet you're still here to share your insight that as humans, we needn't just wrestle or fight. And so thank you for joining with us, my friend. I know you'll be a class act to the end.
Oh, thank you. I'm all choked up. Fantastic. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Chris?
Mr. Poffo, for yourself, featured columnist Jay Bilstein, and myself, Chris Yannick, thanks so much for being with us on CY Interview, and hang on with us, okay?
Okay.